29 points, 9 assists, 7 rebounds a game, 6'5", long arms, jumps out the gym, Mr. Basketball in a big state, All-American, state champion with possible Hall of Fame teammate and fiery competitor. If I told you I had a prospect like this, where would you say his story would end up? Would you be interested in having him on your team? You damn right. Then I told you he would have a solid year in college and drafted by the Lakers in the first round. At this point, you're salivating. Who is this guy? I continue and say by 27, he'll also be sentenced to 23 years in prison for murder and attempted murder. How do you feel now? Well, that's the question that's never been asked before so many invested in JAVARIS Crittenton, born December 31st, 1987. It wasn't asked because it's impossible to predict this type of future. Sure, we know what tomorrow's weather will be or what it will look like for the rest of the month. But knowing that this talented guy with the quiet, moderate personality would turn out to be a prisoner or murderer would have surprised anyone presented this question. Let's take a look back and try to understand the reasons this guy didn't stick and is now going to spend arguably the best portions of his life behind bars. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth. Get it, man. Crittenton was born in Atlanta, Georgia to a single mother who was just a junior in high school. His father was rarely around and suffered from a liver disease that didn't allow him much time to spend with his son. JAVARIS would grow to be a very active child whom his mother would try to play strong men in his life to build his character and hone his active personality. She found that on the west side of Atlanta at a basketball factory ran by PJ as they called him. PJ would take to JAVARIS and take him under his wings as his own son. But this didn't mean footballs, baseball gloves, and playing catch on the front lawn. This meant that PJ was going to push JAVARIS as hard as he could, discipline and being singled out from his peers. It was not done maliciously to hurt the young Crittenton, but because PJ saw something in him and wanted the very best for this child he now called his own. So if the kids were running a mile, JAVARIS would have to run too. If they were making layups right-handed, JAVARIS would have to make them without the ball touching the rim at all. If they were supposed to be at the gym at 10 a.m., Crittenton would be required to show up at 8 and stay later than everyone else. For some, this would be unreasonable and too harsh, but not for JAVARIS. He craved that discipline and loved the fact that he finally had a man like PJ in his life. Another reason is because as a young boy, JAVARIS knew what he wanted to do. He always had dreams of making the NBA and was lucky enough to have the foresight to know this man was going to prepare him for it. So he missed no days and never showed up late. He made every basket required and became the leader and disciplined boy PJ wanted and expected him to be, and it worked out. JAVARIS would dominate the youth scene and went on to join Dwight Howard at Southwest Atlanta Christian Academy. There, he averaged 28.4 points, 7.5 assists, 8 rebounds as a junior, and was an All-American and state champ by the end of his senior year, increasing all those numbers. Stunt number 1, everything that glitters isn't gold. When it became time to select a college, the young Atlanta native could think of nowhere else he'd rather be than the city that raised him and allowed him to find his way to becoming the man he wanted to be. So he chose the Yellow Jackets of Georgia Tech and was given the ball immediately to follow the lineage of a program littered with great guards before him. Crittenton was solid in his lone season at Tech. His size, deceptive speed, and strength were all things that helped him become a highly coveted prospect in the upcoming draft. But this is where things took its first turn. Although a small one that would change the trajectory of his career forever. After the season where he averaged 14.4 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds, he decided to enter the NBA draft. Now, I'm never the one to say a guy should stay in school when he has the chance to be a first-round draft pick and change his and his family's life when they desperately need it. But JAVARIS was simply not ready to turn pro, if you ask me. Although he had the size and athleticism, he didn't shoot the ball well at all at Tech, or rebound well for his size. In 31 minutes a game, he shot just 35% from the college three, 45% from the field, and in the 70s from the free throw line. To me, a great way to tell a prospect is good enough to play in the league is if he can shoot at least high 40s to 50% from the field, high 30s or 40s from three, and 85 to high 80s from the free throw line. Take Damian Lillard for example, a guy built in almost the same mold as JAVARIS, but shot in the high 80s from the line for his career, 40% from three, and 50 from the field. The reason is because he stayed 4 years. He let his game develop and was ready to enter the league. Imagine if JAVARIS stayed at least one more season. He would have been so much more polished and ready to dominate with his size and tenacity. But he got drafted, right? That was another problem. He got drafted to the worst situation he could be in as a point guard that couldn't shoot well enough to slide to the two and garner more minutes. The Lakers, yep. They selected him with the 19th pick in the draft, and immediately I knew that was a terrible spot for him. He needed to develop. A team that allowed him to do that would have been perfect. In 2007, the year Crittenton was drafted, Kobe was coming off one of his best seasons, averaging 31 points a game, and would win 2 more chips following drafting JAVARIS. Crittenton struggled to find minutes next to Kobe and at the point, as he wasn't a natural scorer and didn't play with the pace and poise of a point guard. He always looked out of control and predictable, as he always resorted to driving the ball and using his physical abilities instead of settling down the offense and running the team. Midway through his rookie season, the Lakers would trade JAVARIS in order to acquire a piece that would help them win a few championships in Pau Gasol, sending the young Crittenton to Memphis and out of the glittery glitz of Hollywood. Stunt number 2, the first taste. During his brief time in LA, JAVARIS got himself caught up in some very bad energy in the form of the gang culture and old friends with roots to his hometown Atlanta. I always felt like it's a grave mistake when these athletes and musicians become famous and then decide to join gangs and live a lifestyle they're just not savvy enough for. But hey, maybe it was the situation where Crittenton was robbed outside a restaurant in LA before he even played a game in the NBA that made him feel like he needed protection. Or maybe it was his background. Crittenton didn't grow up with a father or a big family he could lean on, so maybe he was looking for that brotherly love and found it in the form of the vultures that see a guy like Crittenton as a famous cash cow to finance their own street endeavors. Either way, JAVARIS was caught up and it led him down a destructive path. He would be approached at his home multiple times about the company he was keeping by police, and it became not so much about basketball anymore and more like he was living a street life with no turning back. This distracted him, and he didn't have the support system to help him navigate through. His father figure PJ was dealing with his own health problems and wasn't a strong figure in his life like he used to be. But things got even worse for Crittenton because of the things he'd seen, learned, and was victim to in LA. Stunt number 3, writing checks you just can't cash. JAVARIS Crittenton was not a gangster. We all can agree on that. But he was caught up in some gangsta activity ever since he stepped foot in the NBA. Nowadays, you see these young rookies surrounded with a circle of guys that keep them out of all the distractions. For JAVARIS, he was right in the eye of it and never left. He would be traded from the Grizzlies to the Wizards in 2008, in the same year he was traded there. This is now his 3rd team in little over a year. During his time with the Wizards, things began cool, as he and their star Arenas were getting along just fine, until one crucial team jet ride where they both were deep into a game of spades and egos got crossed. They got into a verbal altercation that almost led to physical activity. Gilbert would then bring 3 guns to the locker room and ask this nigga to pick one he wants to be shot with. What in the Obama is this? What in the Obama is this, man? Crittenton, already suffering from mild PTSD from getting his chain snatched in LA and feeling like he was affiliated in the streets, decided to bring his own gun to the party. Crittenton would later be suspended and pleaded to a misdemeanor gun possession charge, while Gilbert pleaded to a felony. Difference is, Gil had already secured the bag by then and JAVARIS hadn't. He was released from the team in 2010 and signed to a non-guaranteed contract by the Bobcats, which he would never play a game for. Instead, after a few games in China and the D-League, he was robbed for his chain and pocket money again. But this was the last time, Crittenton said. Crittenton decided to retaliate and find the guys who robbed him. He decided it was in his gangster interest to commit a drive-by and get these niggas back, right? But instead ended up killing an innocent mother of 4 and was eventually sentenced to 23 years in prison after pleading guilty and taking a deal. Crittenton is a sad story, man, because I really thought he had what it took. He just had all the other bad ingredients mixed in. Another sad story of wasted talent who won't see the light of day anytime soon. It's your boy JC Stunted Growth, and I'm out.